The last video I did showed me putting in the pistons. So since I've put the pistons in, obviously I took the motor from standing on its end and I laid it back down. But before I did that, I put, I can't remember, but the cam gears on it. I ended up putting both pieces of the timing cover on it, mounted the governor, mounted the motor mount, which before was tight as could be and had a hard time getting off, but as you can see, it's movable now, so that's what we want. You know, new pin here on the end of the crankshaft and pulley. So I was going to put a head gasket, put the head on, but the head gasket I had come in was messed up, so they're sending me a new one. So that's a video for another day. And then I've been cleaning up in between the frame rails and under the frame rails. I still have to clean all this up, this pedestal. I pulled the radiator, as you can see. So I'm going to get all this cleaned up. The stuff that's hard to reach when I paint, so I'm going to get all this cleaned up because there'll be an engine and all that stuff in here. And then I will go ahead and get it cleaned up and then sand it, and I'll prime it, and then I will paint it probably from about here forward, just this part that you can't get to before I put the engine in. So then I will paint the front, I'll paint the engine, paint the front of the engine, because this is the hardest part to get to. Then I'll paint all this, then I'll continue to work. But that way this will already be kind of seed painted. So when it comes time to paint the entire tractor, I don't have to try to reach in here between the radiator and the fan and all that to try to paint it. So that's the way I like to try to do it. But I've been working on the radiator, and here's the old drain pipe, and it was just barely hanging on by a thread, and it broke. So I ended up putting the easy out in it, and it wouldn't get it. And so when I got in there and looking, I noticed it's pretty thin, so I just took a punch where I could get to it, and I just punched it and curled it up, and then took a pair of needle nose pliers and twisted it out. It came right out. I'm fixing to build a couple of plates, plate to go here, and a plate to go here out of some scrap I have. And then I will silicone it or something and bolt these up and seal it, put water in the radiator and see if it's going to leak. And that's how I check that. So that's, and then you can see from the side I've cleaned it up and it looks a little better. The tractor's starting to kind of take a little bit of shape. The engine should be good, and everything should be hunky-dory. It's moving along like it should. I'm going to have to stop it. I got a couple of leaks in this. As you can see, this pedestal's been leaking a little bit. So what I like to try to do is I like to use this, stay there. I like to put this stuff in them. John Deere, I know it sucks, John Deere, but it's cornhead grease. It's thin enough that it thick enough it don't really leak, and it's thin enough that it won't get so stiff in the wintertime you can't steer it. So John Deere cornhead grease was the one that they had locally, so I held my nose, walked in there and bought some. So anyway, I don't have a problem with John Deere's. I have a couple of them here. So anyway, that's what's coming up. So right now, I guess I was going to work on that radiator until that head gasket comes in. I cleaned the pan and I knocked some dents out of it. As you can see here, it was kind of dented up, so I cleaned it up a little bit. I still need to knock that old paint off of it, but a little at a time. And then I cleaned up my petcocks nice and good, so they'll close good and I can get oil out of them, you know, so I can check the oil. They cleaned up pretty good. I also worked on the starter crank. This starter crank is bent, and it looks like a lot of them happens. What people would do is they would hang their starter on here, starter handle, and then they'd stick a cotter pin or something in it through here, and it'd ride on the front of the tractor, and if they ever hit anything with it, it'd either bend this or both. And I don't know if this is the starter handle that came with this tractor originally, but it's one that came with it when I bought it. It's not really bent much, but this was bent pretty good. I ended up straightening it out with a cheater bar of ice and a however many ton press that little guy is over there. And then somebody's been on it with a pipe wrench, so I kind of cleaned that up. And they got on this part of it with a pipe wrench and made it really ugly, and I cleaned it up. I do need to get another spring. This spring's actually busted. I still have enough tension that it works, but I'd rather have a little bit more, you know. And then since I've got the radiator and everything off of it, I'm going to go ahead and clean this out. Clean this hole. They fill up with junk. So it's machined right here the first couple of inches. So about this deep in there it's machined. And the rest of it's cast, and it's cast open a little bigger than this hole. And it fills up with grease and grime and that kind of stuff. And that makes that starter handle drag a little bit. Doesn't push in and out as easy as it should. And the last thing you want is that thing hanging up when your tractor starts. So in case something gets in trouble, you want to be able to let go of it and that handle go and get out of the way. So always take a little time and get real careful at cleaning these up, because you know I don't want to get swatted with one of those crank handles. So it doesn't matter how careful you are, eventually something may happen. Accidents happen. So most of the bolts that I've been getting off have been cleaning up good. And I'll take them over to the wire wheel. The setup that I use is here's a radiator bolt. So I take them, they look pretty good, then I'll take them over here. I got two grinders. I got wire wheels on this grinder, and I got stones on that one. And I have a knotted or a twisted wire and a kinked wire, and I just sit here and turn it on and just clean them up. You know, and then if they need to, I'll chase the threads with a tap and a die. And and you know, if you clean them up, then you can kind of see what you're working with here. I'm sure everybody else does it the same way, but at just a moment, you can kind of see what it does. It don't take long for the bad rust. I'll use this wheel over here. And that's the way I do it. That grinder right there is the cheapy. I think Harbor Freight sells them as a buffer, but it's variable speed. And this one here is about wore out. Then you can turn it on and go as fast or as slow as you want. And then I just put a kinked wire cup on it. And it does a pretty good job of knocking rust and grime off. And then you can get a twisted wire cup for tougher stuff. I still need to do the valve cover. It still needs cleaning. I got to rebuild the carburetor. I haven't torn into the magneto yet, but I've got a couple here that are ready to go. And then the other day I had another mag come in the mail that I bought, an E4A. One of these four are all ready to go, and that one, and that one, they'll work. Those are F4s like this Farmall needs, and then here's the F4 that came off this Farmall. I may keep this one and make it work because I like this kind of a impulse release. You pull that up and it releases the impulse versus sticking a nail in the end. This is a little nicer, so I'll probably use that on this one. This is the one that came off of it, so I'll clean it up, maybe do some videos on that too. So that's what's coming down the pipe. So, thanks for watching, and be sure and hit like and subscribe.